Sometimes picking out the PC case that you need for your system is the easy part. Other times, UPS decides that they are going to have a little bit of fun with that new box. In this video, I'm going to discuss how to find the right PC case for your next gaming system, as well as some important resources of where you can go to get that information to make the decision. And then I'm going to show you how I disassemble and prepare a case for a build. This is the Project SeVeN series. It's a long form series where I'm going to go over every single bit of detail that I know of how to build a computer so that you are either ready to build your own or potentially modify one you already have. If you're interested in gaming performance content like this, go ahead and click that subscribe button. And while you're at it, why don't you click the like button too? Jumping straight into what you need to consider as you are looking for a case. I could not do this topic justice the way that Steve at Gamers Nexus actually does. So I highly recommend you check out his documents, his numbers, all of the tests that he does and his team does in order to figure out what is actually the best case for you. In this particular instance, I'm looking at the best normalized thermal performance. And that's right there is why I came up with the choice for the Phanteks P500A for Project SeVeN. It features 140mm fans in the front, 3 of them, and it supports 140mm fans all around the case. Why is that so important? 140mm. The slower the fan will rotate in order to move that column of air, which should reduce noise. So this is the video. I will link it down below, but there's also this link. Now in here, Steve and his team have a tremendous amount of information. You can see right here every case that they tested. Here most recently, you can see the temperatures for the CPU. There's temperatures for the GPU in here. There's temperatures overall in here. It is a wealth of great information, and I trust Steve and his team's information probably more than anybody else that is out there. That's another reason why I trusted the idea that this Phanteks was going to provide the best thermals and acoustics for what I was trying to build. So let's talk about cases a little bit more though. You can see here at the very top, we have what might be considered a mini case, a smaller case. This actually has 2 200mm fans in the front, but this particular case is not that great for liquid cooling, which is actually very important if you're planning to overclock your CPU. So this case for me is out. Personally, I don't really like mini cases as well. There's a lot of different ones out there. There's a lot of great manufacturers of mini cases, but you can see the significant size difference here. For me, the smaller cases are very good for things like streaming boxes, for things that are going to not be overclocked, for systems that are designed to go in tight spaces, maybe even media centers. But Project SeVeN is designed to be a multi-purpose streaming, gaming, content creation kind of a system. Because of that, it's going to have multiple hard drives inside of it. It's going to have multiple cards inside of it. It's going to be more of a workhorse than it is something that is designed to look pretty. And to me, the mini cases are really that. They're designed to look pretty. They're designed to go into smaller places. So I would highly recommend staying in this mid-tower size, not the mini tower size. The other consideration that you want to put in place here is the RGB. You can see different cases have different levels of RGB. You don't have to get a case that has RGB built into it. You can get fans that have RGB and give you that lighting effect. In fact, I'm going to cover that in a future video. But if you are looking for a case that has built-in LEDs or RGB, Lee & Lee produces some of the best that are out there. Corsair also produces one that is very top notch and consistently get you some good scores overall. But for me, again, it comes down to noise and thermals, which is why these are the three that both Steve recommends and therefore I would recommend. I have no problem making the recommendation to follow Steve's advice right here with either of these systems, either of these sets of cases. So you have the 500DX, the 4000D, both of those are Corsair, and then of course you have the P500A, and that is the Phanteks that we got. So now that we know a little bit more about what to look for in cases, let's go over here to PCPartPicker. Now remember, this is going to automatically sort by popularity first, and you can see the H510 is extremely popular. This is a very popular case all around. People love this case. It's all the time on Reddit. You also have the O11 Dynamic, which is also on Reddit a whole lot. In fact, my Project Red Star is that exact system. You can start seeing some of the Phanteks pop up, and you have, of course, the 4000D, which was mentioned right here. So, depending upon what you are looking for, you can either go for this Core 1000, 4000D. We'll bring this up. This is an AirFlow designed case. It does a very good job of airflow, but you can note these fans are 120, which means you're going to have slightly louder acoustics because of this particular fan design. It also means that you're probably not going to easily be able to put in a 280 rad. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's look up exactly the diagram that Corsair has created for the 4000D. You simply do a search. More or less the top result is going to be the one that you want. So here we can see the same case. It's in black. As we scroll down, we should see the design elements that they have included right here. So you can see, okay, so it does support a 140. You can see it putting it in place here. So it can support two 140s up top, two 140s in the back, and it looks like 120 up front, okay? If you switch over here to what it says radiator, you can select the 140. Okay, so that's great. So this right here would actually give you a lot of good performance for an AIO. Again, we're going to go over that AIO concept in the future, but you can see that this Corsair case would meet exactly the cooling needs that I have set up for Project 7 as well. It has a 280 support bracket on the top and in the back. For the front, we would be looking at 120s for the intake, which could make it a little bit louder than necessarily I want, but it would do the job. So you could pick up this case as well if you are more into the Corsair line. Corsair does make a variety of RGB elements that you can include in your case, and you can also see the price here is pretty good. There's a promo at Newegg for $65. That is a heck of a deal for a case like this. Now let's compare though against the Phanteks, and there's one very strong reason that I did go with this Phanteks case. So other than the fact that you could get it in white and black, I went with this Phanteks case because it includes 3 RGB elemented case fans right up front. So right up front, you get those extra fans that are included. So right here are those same Phanteks fans that are going to be included in the case itself. And you can see we can pick up one for $18. Remember, there's 3 in that particular case. So when you start doing the math, the fact that the Phanteks already includes 3 of those fans, you can add one additional one and pretty much be done with your fan purchases. So when you compare the Corsair 4000D against the Phanteks P500A, the price difference actually starts to go away when you consider the level of fans that are included with the Phanteks. That's just another thing to consider and look out for. Now for Project 7, here I am. The first thing that I want to cover, yes, I'm going to even cover unboxing. This right here, this dent, you can see here a major impact happened here and some crush impact happened there. So that could be a problem. What I want you to get into the habit of doing is anytime you see damage on the box that you're going to actually use for your system, I want you to make sure that you take a picture of it first. Why? By having that extra picture, then you are able to refer to it later on should anything inside of here be damaged. For a case like this, if it's properly packaged, it's not going to be an issue. But for other sensitive things like GPUs and CPUs, that little bit of damage could have bent a pin, it could have knocked a VRM loose. You never know, and you never really want to chance it. So take a picture, that way you have something to refer to. Opening up a case is generally pretty simple. It even has instructions right on the lid, right here. Open here. Well, I do have my own technique for doing this. So I do split the sides, as you would expect, and I do kind of follow their instructions to open along the top edge. But then when I look inside, I'm looking for, how am I going to get this thing out? Because oftentimes you're going to be met with something like this. A giant black hole with a lot of foam and padding. Padding is great, but how do you open it up? Well, here's the trick. If you spin it around to the other side and you cut along the bottom as well, you can push it through. It really is as simple as that. Now you have a push through instead of trying to fight to get it to actually move for you. So I'm going to take this, set it down, and I'm going to take out the actual case itself. Now, I absolutely, positively, highly recommend keeping the box itself in case you move, in case you need to ship the computer somewhere, in case you need to send the case itself back. I even took Red Star up north, which everybody in Michigan knows where that is. I had to take it up north in order to do some of my holiday shooting. I used the box that I was building the system in for that very purpose. So always try to save that box if you can. So here is the Phanteks box itself. You'll notice that most of these will come ready to go. It is pre-assembled, the fans are in place, but look right here. Remember what I said about damage? A giant dent right there. That is no brainer, and you can see it popped off the sides here as well. So what we're gonna have to do, we're gonna have to send this case back. It was clearly damaged during shipping, but I'm gonna continue to at least explain what's gonna be inside this case. You will often see a lot of Mylar like this. Highly recommend leaving the Mylar in place until the last possible moment. When you're ready to reveal or you're ready to take some glamour shots, that's when you take this Mylar off. When you're manipulating the case, when you're adjusting things and doing all of that work, leave this in place. It prevents scratches, it prevents fingerprints, and it can have some level of impact resistance that will probably not keep the glass itself from shattering, but it certainly will keep it from shattering all over the place. You can also see right here, it is tempered glass. That means it's also going to be shatter resistant. On the case itself, on the backhand side, you're going to note several screws. Now, oftentimes these kind of thumb screws are what are going to be used in order to remove a side component like this in order to get to the inside. This case also features the ability to just slide it open. Pretty cool. These hinges here on the back also allow you to slide the siding off. Now, not all cases are going to be like this. They will all have some element that allows you to take off the side panels, oftentimes things on the top, the bottom, and the front panel itself. On the back, you're also going to note it has places for extra fans, which we will take advantage of. The power supply, which goes down here, which also has these thumb screws for the bracket that's going to hold the power supply in. It's going to have spacers to help with your PCIe. This will help hold up your graphics card or at least keep it in line somewhat. This is also designed to help keep dust and airflow going in the proper direction as well. Right here you can see a big giant opening. That's the I/O port. In other words, the portion of the motherboard that you plug things into. That's going to go right there. All right, so now I'm going to take the case itself, open it up, and show you what's inside this mysterious box. All good case manufacturers are going to include a little box of goodies. And oftentimes you will find inside of these goodies things like screws, bolts, sliders. In this particular instance, this looks like this is a rail of some sort, and trays. So this particular tray right here is going to be for a very big hard drive that you could put inside of the case itself. Now this little bracket right here looks pretty cool. I bet you that's just a simple stop, but that still looks... Oh, this right here is actually pretty important. This is a rubber mounted grommet. This is going to help reduce vibration because a physical spindle is spinning anytime you have one of those larger hard drives. So if you have an actual hard drive and you can get it rubber mounted, that means that little bit of vibration is going to be taken care of. It's going to be isolated and it shouldn't transfer over to your case, which will reduce rattling and can end up, causing some issues and annoyances, especially if the case itself is quiet. This will help make it even more quiet. Inside of here, we have the exact same thing from a storage standpoint, but this right here is a very awesome thing. I am super excited to see this. Extra screws, extra nuts, organized, and a storage tray system, which if it mounts inside the case would be really awesome. Truly, I'm very excited to see this. This is a very good level of quality, and that's kind of what happens when you buy a slightly higher end case. So let's look inside of here. We see these right here. Now this is actually pretty important. Each of your motherboards are going to be a certain size, and it's pretty much standardized across the industry now. I am using an ATX motherboard that is the traditional size. That's what most people would put inside of a mid-tower like this. These standoffs come with the case itself, and this is where you screw down the motherboard. So having these already in place saves you just a little bit of trouble, which is a nice added feature here as well. But then you can also see this is the layout of where my motherboard is, and then this cutout right here is also going to allow me to get access to the back of the motherboard should I ever want to switch out the actual cooler that I'm using, maybe going full liquid cooling, maybe even going with a monoblock like I did with Project Red Star. This hole down here is so that you can see the nice power supply that you have. This to me is somewhat controversial because there's a lot of stickers on the sides of these power supplies and it doesn't always mesh well with the system. If it does look nice or you put something there, then it can often look great as an alternative. Or what a lot of people have started to do is put screens along these openings just like this in order to basically monitor their system and see all of their performance information. A thing I am noticing right now that I don't think is purposeful. This seems dented. This also seems dented. Not happy with UPS right now. Back here, I can see another thing that is very important. So this is a micro filter. This is going to keep your power supply cooled down. So your power supply is going to be forcing air in and then trying to put air somewhere else. Power supplies need to be cooled just like your other components. If you have a power supply that draws air from the inside of your case and is trying to exhaust it, you actually don't want to use this. You would want to use this if you have a power supply that draws in from the outside and exhausts out into your case. We'll go over that exactly when I install the PSU inside of this. So right here, you can see those big 120 fans. Those are going to draw air from the front of the case and exhaust it towards the back of the case. It's going to move the air this way, which is the traditional airflow method. Additionally, you do have that air coming from the bottom, traveling along this tunnel, which should help with a PSU also getting a proper amount of cooling, or should you ever want to, you could try to put a radiator down here as well. All right, let's pop off this side cover. Like I said, these are thumb screws, but they are really on there. So sometimes you need a good amount of force to get them loosened the first time. It's okay. These have stops on them, I can already tell. So the stop is going to keep the actual screw in place on the siding itself, and that allows you to avoid losing them should you ever take this off, and chances are you're going to be taking this off a few different times. Let's look at the back here. So I like to see this. A lot of options for cable management. I myself am not a huge cable management snob, but I can tell you I do want my cables out of the way and my airflow being able to move. So this is great to see. So many of these options as well also tells me that a lot of time and attention was provided by Phanteks. These are the traditional SSD sized hard drive cages. If you have a 2.5-inch hard drive like in a laptop, that's exactly what these are for. This is also rubber mounted. So if you're actually using a spindle on these, this would also be isolated from not making noise in the case. A very good touch. All of these components are removable, by the way. You don't have to have these elements inside of every case. Oftentimes you'll find that there might be switches or things up here at the top that you just don't use. And a good manufacturer will actually allow you to pop off the cables that you don't use and remove it, essentially helping to declutter the case. Okay. This dent is just on the shroud itself. I might try Phanteks and see if they can just give me another one of these. That way I don't have to ship the entire case back. I think that would be more beneficial. But if I do have to ship it back, then that'll slow me down. But hey, that's kind of what happens. Also, that's why we took a picture of that dent and that damage beforehand, because we now know this was damaged in shipping. It wasn't exactly handled properly. So here is a micro hold filter material, but this isn't removable like it is in some systems in cases that you might see. You're going to have to make sure that you clean this with a vacuum at a regular cadence. It's going to do a very good job, but it will collect dust over time. And right here you can see we have a much better view of the actual fans themselves. I can see here that there is a ring around the center section right here for the RGBs. It looks like there is probably somewhere on the order of 12 RGBs actually sitting there. You can see our status indicator lights up here too. One more thing I'm noticing here is there's a hidden compartment right here. Now this probably is to help hide cables or anything that might come up in this direction. If you're not using it, you can slide it closed exactly like that. On the top here, we do have a very opened ventilation. The spacing on top here is for both a 120 and a 140 millimeter fan set or radiator, which is exactly the direction that we're going. You also have that same design here on the back. So we're going to be able to get a good amount of airflow moving in this case. We'll go over that in a future video. If you enjoy gaming performance content, consider clicking that like button, maybe even subscribing. If you're already a subscriber, please visit patreon.com/TheGrayingTech to learn how you can help me pay it forward. So let's summarize all of this. So first off, when you are looking for a case, it does tend to be on the latter side of your considerations for the components that you're trying to get. The case itself is important though, particularly you have to be moving air across your components, across your system in order to get good performance. Temperature is actually the number one thing that you have to worry about as you are trying to overclock and as you are trying to game. You can keep your temperatures lower, the systems and the components will all boost higher, giving you better overall performance. The main source that I think a lot of people should trust right now when it comes to cases in these reviews has to be Steve at Gamers Nexus. He has reviewed so many cases and the information is very easy to actually access. I love that he keeps a running tally of all the systems that he tested, how well they did on air, how well they did on water. He really is providing a great resource, and that's where I would highly encourage you to go when selecting a case. Yes, there's a lot of popular cases out there. There's a lot of trends out there, and you can go for a trendy look, but don't sacrifice airflow in order to get that. When it comes to actually disassembling the case, be sure to take a picture before you unpackage everything. Make sure that you keep track of any damage that might have occurred during shipping, as unfortunately we saw here with this Phanteks. To unbox, I do recommend laying it on its side, opening up both of the top and the bottom flaps, and then you're able to gently push the case out. That is a far easier way to actually remove a case. Also, save the box. You never know if you're going to have to ship, move, or otherwise relocate that system, and putting everything in a secured box like the one that it came in is actually very, very useful. Last but not least, when you get the case, go ahead and do exactly what I did. You saw I looked at the accessories. You saw I kind of disassembled some things and got an understanding of how all of the components were going to work. Now, why is that? Because I'm already planning out. I'm planning out cables and I'm planning out the other airflows that I'm going to need. So when you get that box open, enjoy, take a look. This is where your nice new system is going to be. Breathe it in because this is the start right here. Turning it around, I do have to get this PSU bracket off because in the next video, I'm going to talk about power supplies, exactly what you need to dive into, and I'm going to show you how to properly mount one for both good thermals and easy connectivity throughout the rest of the case.